Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Ramanavicharamarg. Do not mourn the dead. Talk number 16, 19th January 1935. A British gentleman by the name of Douglas Ainsley, who also had a second name, Grant Duff, an aristocrat, roughly about 70 years of age, a bachelor all his life, and formerly a diplomat in Europe, in Athens, Paris, Hague, etc., was visiting the ashram during the month of January of 1935. He had brought a letter of introduction from Paul Brunton, who was another British journalist who had written extensively and made notes about conversations with Bhagavan and lived in the ashram for quite some extended period of time. Douglas Ainsley, Grant Duff, had many notable friends, and amongst friends in India, one of the most notable friends he had was Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, who would then become the President of India later on. Mr. Ainsley, or Mr. Duff, as I said, was a humble man with abstemious habits and mostly was quiet. For the first 2 days when he was in the ashram, hardly any dialogue between him and Bhagavan took place, except for the fact that he had desired to know about the existence of departed souls and how best to serve them. Before his question was responded to, a letter from Riga, which is the capital of Latvia, which was an independent nation in the 1930s, was received. And the reply to that letter, which had been received from Riga, was read out to Mr. Douglas Ainsley in response to his question, because the letter that was received was very similar and had answered the question that Mr. Grant Duff had asked. But before we get to that response, here is what Bhagavan had said about Mr. Duff. And from here on, we shall read the rest of the talk, number 16, ad verbatim. So, until now, whatever was said is what is part of talk number 16. But abridged for simplicity and taking all the salient features of what the first page of this talk says, in which and in what I just narrated. So here is what Bhagavan said before the answer to the letter that was written from Riga was read out to him. Speaking of him later, Maharshi remarked, "Just think of an old man of 70 not choosing to live peacefully in his own house on the income he had earned. How intense has been his earnestness that he has left his native land, dared a sea voyage of 6,000 miles, and faced the hardships of long railway journeys in a foreign land, ignorant of the language, undergoing the vicissitudes of a lonely life, submitting to the inclemency of hot climate in surroundings uncongenial and unaccustomed to him. He could have been happy in his own house. It is his longing for internal peace that has brought him here. Quite so, not the intensity of his earnestness is revealed by his illuminating experiences here. Within 4 days of his arrival, people do mention. With regard to the question concerning departed souls, so long as a man identifies himself with his gross body, the thought materialized as gross manifestations must be real to him, because his body is imagined to have originated from another physical being. The other exists as truly as his own body. Having existed here once, it certainly survives death, because the offspring is still here and feels he has been born of the other. Under these circumstances, the other world is true, and the departed souls are benefited by prayers offered for them. On the other hand, considered in a different way, the one reality is the self, from whom has sprung the ego, which contains within itself the seeds of predispositions acquired in previous births. The self illumines the ego, the predispositions, and also the gross senses, whereupon the predispositions appear to the senses to have materialized as the universe and become perceptible to the ego, the reflections of the self. The ego identifies itself with the body and so loses sight of the self, and the result of this inadvertence is dark ignorance and the misery of the present life. The fact of the ego rising from the self and forgetting it is birth. So it may be said that the birth of the individual has killed the mother. The presence or the present desire to regain one's mother is in reality the desire to regain the self, which is the same as realizing oneself, or the death of the ego. This is surrender unto the mother, so she may live eternally. Maharshi then read out from the Tamil version of the Yoga Vashishta the story of Dirgatapasri, who had two sons, Punya and Papa. After the death of the parents, the younger one mourned the loss, and the elder brother consoled him as follows. Quote, "Why do you mourn the loss of our parents? I shall tell you where they are. They are only within ourselves and are ourselves. They are only within ourselves and are ourselves. For the life current has passed through innumerable incarnations, births and deaths, pleasures and pains, etc. Just as the water current in a river flows over rocks, pits, sands, elevations, and depressions on its way, but still the current is unaffected. Again, the pleasures and pains, births and deaths are like undulations on the surface of seeming water in the mirage of the ego. The only reality is a self from where the ego appears and runs through thoughts which manifest themselves as the universe, and in which the mothers and fathers, friends and relatives appear and disappear. They are nothing but manifestations of the self, so that one's parents are not outside the self. So there is no reason to mourn. Learn it, realize it, and be happy." End quote. End of talk number 16. Do not mourn the departed. They are part of us. And once we reach this kind of maturity, in our meditative practice, in our contemplative reflections about our own limited ego, and we embrace it as part of me, but not of me, as given unto me because of prarabdha, to be washed and to be won over, so that going into future existences, my prarabdha continues to diminish and I become cleansed of my previous dark actions from many, many millions of previous births. So my fellow devotees, my friends, crying over, remembering the departed souls again and again, every year doing shraddha, doing this puja and that puja, is only leading us back to karmakanda, which cannot give you realization of the self, which cannot make you realize the ultimate truth, that alone which is awareness and consciousness. Do not mourn the death. Do not mourn those who have departed you in this life. Let them go. Let us be alone. Let us be without any support. Let us be without any attributes that we can claim to be me, this body. Let us be beyond that. Anyatha sharanam nasti, tvameva sharanam mama, tasmat karunya bhave, rakshama rameshvara, rakshama rameshvara, rakshama Ramaneshvara.